building a better Bay Area, moving forward, finding solutions. This is ABC 7 News.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Z. You're watching Getting Answers live on ABC 7, Hulu Live, and wherever you stream. We're asking experts your questions every day at 3 to get answers for you in real time. Today, with many Bay Area schools seeing teacher and student strikes over COVID safety, California Superintendent of Education Tony Thurman will be joining us to address issues that are pressing all schools. But the big story, news that Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer will retire in June at the conclusion of this term. Justice Breyer is 83, the oldest justice on the High Court. He has served for 27 years. Nominated by former President Bill Clinton, Breyer is one of 3 liberals on the bench that's now split 6-3 in favor of conservatives. Justice Breyer has deep roots in the Bay Area. He was born in San Francisco, graduated from Lowell High School in Stanford. This is his Lowell yearbook photo. Joining us today, someone very close to Justice Breyer, Justice Stuart Pollak, who's on the California 1st District Court of Appeal, Division 3 in San Francisco. Justice Pollak, thanks so much for being here with us.
My pleasure.
Well, I guess it's safe to say you've known Justice Breyer a long time, right? You go back to Lowell?
Yes, certainly true. We go back to Lowell, and we lived together for several years, 3 years at Stanford as undergraduates.
Okay.
We know each other quite well.
Well, Justice Pollak, we dug up a picture here, courtesy of the Lowell Alumni Association. I think that was the forensics team.
That was the debate. That was the forensics group debated. Stephen and I both debated it, among other things.
It was a competitive debate team, right? I won't ask you who was the stronger debater because I imagine that's a debate in itself. But it's safe to say, I know you guys are close. You talk regularly, and you talked with him recently. How long has Justice Breyer been contemplating this decision and this announcement?
Well, he has seen it coming. I think from the day that Biden's election victory was announced, for those of us who believed it, he's been worrying about the situation and agonizing over it since then. I think it's fair to say. He was instantly aware of the reasons why people may have been calling for his retirement. And he's been pondering it and agonizing over it, I think, since then, it's fair to say.
I can imagine how agonizing it must have been. There have been calls for him, as you mentioned, to retire. You know, there are billboards up in D.C. There are op-eds written by legal voices like the dean of UC Berkeley's law school. Do you think Justice Breyer felt that pressure keenly, and how heavily do you think he weighed that?
Well, I'm not sure it's the pressure. He was certainly aware of all of the commentators and various people who were calling upon him to retire. He was certainly aware of that, but I don't think that's what influenced him. I mean, it was a dilemma for him, and he certainly was aware of the competing considerations. On one hand, he is still in good health, still very active, still performing, ably, and playing a very important role in the court, I think, at this time, and I think that's something he's aware of. On the other hand, although he has been outspoken in his desire to view the court as not involved in the politics of the day, he's certainly aware of the significance of his retiring or not retiring at this point in terms of the overall future composition of the court. So it's been a real dilemma for him, and he's been struggling with it, as I say, for the last many months.
Yeah. Do you believe if he didn't have to consider the political considerations or what the reality is, if you will, he could have had fun if you will, continuing to do this work for many more years?
I think so. I think, he's still in very good health, still enjoying what he was doing. And I think if it weren't for the realities of the political situation today, he probably would have stayed on for, who knows how many more years. But his faculties are still as good as ever, and I think there would have been no other reason for him to retire at this point.
We've heard some of the talks he's given and certainly agree with that. What motivated him in all his years on the bench to do this work? What drove him?
What drove him? Well, it's hard to say what drives anyone. When he was, committed to the democratic principles of our country, and certainly very much aware of the significance of the court and the work that it does. And it's been work that he has been genuinely committed to performing. And I think, in the last couple of years or so, several years, it's been clear that he's playing a very significant role on the court, and was committed to, to doing just that, and not, relinquishing or abdicating the role that he has been playing.
More and more so, he's been writing dissensions as opposed to the majority opinion. Has he talked to you about how he feels about that?
We've talked, but as close friends as we are, I mean, he is very discreet about that. Obviously, he's very concerned about the issues, and concerned about the way some of these decisions have gone. But above all, he has always maintained his high respect for his colleagues, and his belief that his colleagues, though he may disagree with them, are acting themselves from their sincere beliefs and not from other extraneous reasons. So he's been very respectful of the court, the process, but very concerned, obviously, about some of the recent decisions with which he has issued strong dissents.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about the relationships he built. Notably, he was very good friends with Justice Scalia, right? Even though their viewpoints differ greatly. I wonder if, what do you think is notable about the role he played on that bench in that dynamic of 9 people?
Well, I think he has played a role in moderating views in all directions. I mean, that is his temperament, and not to go off to extremes. And I think, working with his colleagues, I think he has played a role in moderating views, even those with which he disagrees. Some of these decisions, although may disagree with them, there are nuances, and there are, that you can go to one extent or another, and I think he has played a role in moderating things as best he could and as far as he could.
Was that his role at Lowell too, on the forensics team? Was he the one that brought people together, or was he quite different then in his teenage years and college years? No. Steve has always been a moderating influence, and not somebody to provoke antagonisms. Some of our friends, I think of a couple of friends that we had back in high school with whom we had very divergent views on various issues. Steve was never, an antagonist. He was always a moderate person in his outlook. Well, Justice Pollak, I can't let you go without asking you, what do you think retirement will look like for him after June? Where might he settle? How might he spend his time? What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, he hasn't told me, but my speculation is that he'll be doing one of two things. I mean, I would not be surprised at all to see him return to Harvard Law School and do some more teaching. I would not be surprised to see him write another book. You know, he's written several while he's been on the court, which is an amazing feat in itself. But those are the two areas that I would expect him to return to. I think he'd probably move back to Boston, where he's been situated. But that's my best guess.
Well, hopefully.
I think we'll be hearing from him.
I hope so. We certainly will. And we're glad we got to hear from you. And I do hope that a little time in the future is in store for the two of you to catch up over lunch or dinner or something. Justice Pollak, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I should mention my colleague Liz Kreutz interviewed Justice Breyer's brother, Charles Breyer, himself a judge on the U.S. District Court here in Northern California, and she will have that later on today on ABC 7 News at 5. All right, coming up next, California Superintendent of Education Tony Thurman is joining us to talk about a wide variety of topics, including a new initiative to address mental health challenges for students. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us today. Stick around. We have Tony Thurman coming right up. The U.S. Surgeon General recently issued an advisory highlighting an urgent need to address the nation's youth mental health crisis. Today, California Superintendent of Education Tony Thurman announced a new initiative to address mental health in California schools, and it's called A Trusted Space. Joining us now to talk about this and other issues relating to schools and students is Superintendent Tony Thurman. Superintendent Thurman, good to have you here.
Thanks, Christian.
So we're 2 years into the pandemic, unfortunately, and some kids had to revert back to remote learning this month. Look, all of this is stressful. Any data showing how much the pandemic has affected students mentally in California?
You know, people are still collecting data. There's not a lot of it nationally, but there are some who estimate that 160,000 young people have lost a caregiver, a primary or a secondary caregiver to the coronavirus pandemic. In some data comparisons, they say 31% increase in suicide rates between 2021 compared to 2020. And so whether you have hard data or even just what we hear every time we go to a school, we see an increase in behaviors, we see an increase in depression, And so we know that our students have experienced the toll that this pandemic has had on all of us.
All right. So with that in mind, a nonprofit and your office together launch a Trusted Space. Tell us how that works and who does it support and how do they do it?
Yeah, it's meant to be training and professional development and a curriculum that will focus on helping young people. We're also focused on how we support educators, and I'm grateful to our state surgeon general who has a vision for how to help our educators who experience tremendous fatigue. The way we're trying to also approach this is making sure that we expand the number of counselors who are available to help California students. As you know, we've rolled out a plan to help us attract 10,000 mental health clinicians. And so we think all of these are going to be important to this work to support our students.
All right. So thank you so much for telling us about that. Definitely looking forward to seeing how that initiative works out in the coming months. But I want to talk about something else that's very timely because we've seen it even here in the Bay Area. Some districts, teachers threatening to strike over COVID safety measures at schools. Some have taken, one-day walkouts. And today, West Contra Costa County teachers are meeting with their school district to try to reach an agreement. Look, do you encourage walkouts as these issues are being worked out, or do you encourage educators to stay in their classrooms as they work it out?
Obviously, these are complicated issues, and we want to see how we can address the concerns. I think people are raising real concerns about wanting access to COVID mitigation measures, and they're right to be concerned because when school opened in January, we saw some of the highest case rates. At the same time, I just would acknowledge that we know that many of our districts in the Bay Area are doing everything that they can to get those resources. If you look at a district like Oakland, where they've said every single student and staff person can have access to KN95s. I know that right before school opened in West Contra Costa, I was directly in touch with the superintendent who was setting up over the weekend before school started days for families to come and get COVID take-home tests. And so while these are complicated issues, I do want to acknowledge our districts are doing everything they can. What we want more than anything is for our schools to stay open. We know that our kids do the best when schools stay open. It's best for their social emotional learning. We know it's tough, but we're doing all we can to help them get all the PPE and the COVID mitigation measures to do that. And again, I want to thank our educators and families for doing all they can to keep our schools open.
I think two of the biggest asks are, the availability of the KN95 or N95 mask and also on-site testing. Do you believe those things can be given out to all schools that want them in California for the duration of the school year, for the rest of the school year? Do we have that?
It's been hard. We opened schools in January against the backdrop of basically no take-home tests for COVID testing. And thanks to President Biden, who scrambled to say we're going to send more, that got us moving in the right direction. Our governor scrambled to say we're going to get more. But, that lack of availability nationwide clearly hurt everyone. And so right now, California has provided, through the Department of Public Health, has provided every school with access to take home tests and is providing masks for students and for staff. Right now we need to work through to see how much we can provide to get them through the whole school year, because everything that we're seeing indicates that we're going to need to continue wearing masks and using COVID testing and vaccines to get through the school year as we continue to combat the coronavirus pandemic.
You bring up the masks, and I wonder if you think the California school mask mandate should stay for, the rest of the year, because some doctors are now evolving and saying perhaps they should be optional now. One influential UCSF doctor, Dr. Monica Gandhi, that we have on frequently, also advocates for that. What is your opinion on that?
I can't rival that doctor's experience. I'm not a medical doctor or any kind of doctor, but I do know this, that wearing masks has been one of the things that has allowed us to keep our schools open and keep everyone safe. I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's inconvenient, but it literally can save lives. And that's what I want to focus on. And I guess I would just urge caution and to not move too quickly. We've seen this before. When we've had surges and we come out of the surge and then people say, okay, we're not going to wear masks. And then all of a sudden we see another surge. And so I would just urge caution. Go slowly. Our students have demonstrated that they can adapt to wearing a mask. And if that keeps them alive, let's do that. Let's take our time. Let's not rush to judgment. And let's continue to use the things that we know keep us safe. Social distancing, wearing masks, and getting vaccines and boosters. That's all part of the equation here.
All right, Superintendent Tony Thurman, thank you so much. Do not go away. Let's take a short break on the air. We'll continue to chat on Facebook Live and be back with more. We'll take a short break. All right, Superintendent Thurman, I got to ask you, how are you doing? You seem totally fine and well, but I follow you on social, and I know that you recently recovered from COVID yourself, right?
Yes. You know, I probably have been to 45 schools since school opened in September, actually even before then. And, you know, I was at a school and one of the staff let me know on a recent visit a few weeks ago that they had tested positive and that I had been exposed. And within a matter of days, I also tested positive. I'm grateful to say that, you know, I've now tested negative many times over the last several weeks, or at least since last week, and that I feel fully recovered. But it's a reminder that we have to continue to be careful. Now, I'm grateful that, you know, I'm vaccinated, I'm boosted, and I think, you know, I had very mild symptoms, and I believe that had a lot to do with it. I'm concerned about the people that I talk to who tell me that they've lost loved ones to COVID who weren't vaccinated, who experienced serious consequences, including death. And so that would be my personal message, is get the vaccine, get the booster if you're eligible. It just might save a life.
Can I just ask you, like, you know, because I think this might help people. If it's too personal, you don't have to tell me. But when the person you were exposed to, were you both masked and you still managed to get it? Were there just, you know, any moments of not masking, like, you know, when you were eating or something? Or was that, what was the situation?
Well, I was giving a speech at a school, and we were all wearing masks, and I was outside. And during the speech, there were portions of the speech where I took my mask off. So I'm reconsidering even what I do now, even when I'm outside.
I see.
And so it's hard to know exactly how this happens, but you know, now I'm wearing, you know, I'm wearing a KN95 mask and a surgical mask underneath that. You know, I highly recommend it now.
So we'll put you on hold there real quickly.
Got it.
And we are back with Superintendent Tony Thurman. You know, during break, we were chatting on Facebook Live, and I think I want to bring this up again because I think it really, we can all learn something from it, which is, Superintendent Thurman, you caught COVID and you were exposed and you were outside, right? And in a situation where you were masked most of the time.
As far as I can tell, right, we don't always know exactly how it occurs, but I did. I tweeted on social media that that I'd been exposed at a school visit, that I had tested positive for COVID. You know, I went into isolation for several days, and you know, just really want to encourage everyone to get a vaccine or a booster because I experienced very mild symptoms. I'm vaccinated. I have a booster, but I know many people who've lost loved ones recently to COVID who weren't vaccinated, who literally died. It's heartbreaking and tragic. And, you know, while anyone can get COVID, having a vaccine and a booster can really help you to not have serious consequences. And so I'm encouraging everyone to go ahead and get your vaccine and get your booster if you're eligible.
All right, Superintendent Thurman, as you know, California will soon require the vaccine for students to be able to go to school, no different from other childhood vaccines. And this week, state lawmaker Dr. Richard Pan introduced a bill to take away the personal belief exemption for that, right? Still allowing for medical exemption, of course. Do you support that?
Well, I haven't had a chance to review the legislation, but I would say this. I'd encourage people to think past the mandate and think about this. You know, can it save a life? And as a parent, I would appeal to other parents. I respect people's rights and personal choices, but we're seeing more young people being impacted by the coronavirus, more child hospitalizations. This is a time for caution. And if a vaccine can save a life, I would just encourage everyone, not just parents, but everyone to think about how we can protect our loved ones, keep our schools open, our businesses open, and our communities open. And the best way to do that is to get a vaccine and a booster if you're eligible.
All right. And will you be taking further action the rest of the school year to make it easier for students to receive their vaccine or booster on site at their schools?
You know, our schools have done tremendous work to make vaccines available. I know that in Oakland Unified School District, about 70% of students between the ages of 7 and 12 have now received a vaccine. Our schools all across the state have been doing vaccine clinics. I've been on vaccine clinic sites in San Francisco, We were handing out COVID testing in Castro Valley. I think that the Bay Area is really doing everything that we can expect. Parents, students, educators all together. We've got to continue to fight this deadly disease. And the best way to do that is to make it easier. And right now we're working on a campaign to help 4 million Californians be able to get a vaccine. And we're going to continue to double down our efforts on the messaging around vaccines and COVID testing, wearing masks, social distancing, and all the things we can do to keep Californians safe.
Superintendent, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I read this week that graduation rates in high school are down and enrollment in community college is down. And I'm also looking at the fact that more students have chosen independent study during this period rather than going to schools. I'm just wondering, when you look at the big picture, how concerned are you about making sure that these students are still thriving and learning well and achieving?
I think we have to be concerned. We've seen that from the start of the pandemic, many students have suffered. If you think about it, when we were in distance learning and students didn't have a million students in our state didn't have a computer, if that was your only way to connect to school, we know that there are going to be learning gaps. And so what we've seen are the learning gaps that we were already working to close have been exacerbated. Our plan is to see how we help students, one, heal from the trauma of the pandemic. That's why we're working on the 10,000 counselors. We're working to keep 15,000 teachers in our California schools. And then we got to help our kids recover. That's why we named our Reading by Third Grade initiative. And we're making 1 million books available to California students. And on top of that, already 1 million books have been downloaded, 2.5 million books read for free online that we've made available to California kids. We know that we're going to have to work to recover. And the way that we're going to do that is through programs like literacy, helping our students learn a second language, and of course, recruiting and retaining more teachers and school staff throughout our state.
All right, we have about 20 seconds left, but I want to ask you if the substitutes crunch and the teaching staffing shortage situation is trending a little better now.
Well, it's just very difficult. Again, I commend all the districts that have figured out ways to, bring on more substitutes. The governor has relaxed some policies for more retirees to be able to come back. But there is a labor shortage in schools nationwide, actually in every single sector of employment. And so I've named a group that's working on how do we get better compensation, better training? How do we build a pathway to help attract more educators? There's no way that we can get there without it, but we're putting in the work to help us get there.
On that note, thank you so much, Superintendent Thurman. We'll continue to chat on Facebook Live. We'll be right back. All right. Do you have 2 more minutes? I know you're pretty much booked every quarter hour.
Always for you, Kristen. Always for you.
I really appreciate that. Always great conversations with you and food for thought. This is not really new, but it's always there in the back burner and sometimes moves to the front burner. I think I'm thinking about that now because of articles, national ones about New York and Stuyvesant and magnet schools. Do you think there's still a place for using merit, that is objective criteria such as grades and test scores, but not necessarily limited to those, to determine admissions to so-called magnet schools or public schools?
We're having a parallel conversation about the value of tests like the SAT. And what we're finding is that the SAT doesn't predict success in college as much as something like grades. Now, when it comes to magnet schools, I think that we should create every opportunity for any student that wants to attend to have the ability to attend. Our magnet schools do incredible work, and I think we should do everything that we can to create options for all students to be able to attend.
All right. So creating opportunities for all students to attend, does that mean admissions could take different forms in your mind?
Well, I think some districts have already started to explore this through a combination of test taking, trying to build out what will be a broad class. Some districts consider social economic factors in terms of building the class that they want. I believe that all of our students can achieve at a very high level. And we should provide the resources for our students to have rigor and to be able to strive for greatness. And I think we need more magnet schools. And that's why I'm sponsoring legislation as we speak that would allow us to convert more of our schools into dual language schools. Sorry, I'm in the office here. To convert more of our schools to dual language schools, because language development is seen as something that supports brain development. It's going to create global citizens in the world.
I think we'll have to have this conversation another time, but I love that disco effect when you were kind of going in and out of the screen. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we got energy savers for our
Thank you so much for joining us on this interactive show, Getting Answers. We'll be here every weekday at 3 o'clock on air and on live stream answering your questions. World News Tonight is coming up next, and I'll see you back here at 4 o'clock. Bye-bye.